It's about winning, of course, but there's more to it than just that because, you want these guys to be able to go home and play another day. Same for our Saints.
We've got about 15 minutes left. We spent the entire show really talking about the upcoming Carolina game. Is there anything that you want to add that you think is pivotal, maybe not necessarily just for the Carolina game, but you think just in the NFL that you've noticed that we should talk about?
I want to address the whole idea of the Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the during the national anthem, and it leading to ratings decline for the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of bothers me that this is actually a legitimate topic.
Yeah.
I get it. Colin Kaepernick kneeling, during the national anthem has set a lot of people off. But truthfully, your priorities need to be definitely questioned. If a guy kneeling for the national anthem ticks you off to the point to where you forgot how many guys have beaten their wives, how many guys have gotten caught with, drugs, how many guys have done so many different things other than peacefully kneeling for the national anthem. If those things didn't bother you and didn't make you turn off the television set, then why in the heck is Kaepernick so deeply rooted into your blood to where you want to turn off the NFL? Let me be clear about this. Colin Kaepernick may have a very minute, less than 1% of the reason why some of you are turning off the TV screen for primetime games. Here's a better reason. The primetime teams have stunk. Last night's game with Tampa and Carolina was a bunch of teams that are so far below 500 it was ridiculous. Tampa made it to 2-3. Carolina now falls to 1-4. The week before that, I believe it was San Francisco and Los Angeles. Well, I believe those were the two teams. I'm sorry, the Thursday night game. I can't recall it at this point. I believe it was San Francisco and Arizona was the Thursday night game. It was just really bad football. In fact, 16 teams in the NFL right now are under 500. 16. Yeah. That is half of your league under 500. And these are the teams that you want to put on primetime football. I get it. You might have thought, because Chip Kelly's in San Francisco, Arizona was a Super Bowl sexy pick, that, okay, this is going to be a good game. Let's put it on primetime. The idea of it all is those teams stink. So if there's any reason why the ratings are what they are, you can add in the presidential debate. You can add that in. You can add in the fact that there are other things going on right now. I mean, the baseball playoffs are taking place right now. You can add those in. But the idea of it all is the reason why the NFL ratings are declining, two reasons. Number one, you're comparing them to the NFL. You can't compare the NFL's ratings to anybody else except the NFL. So, of course, they only, they're one or two things. They're going to spike up because the NFL is king, or they're going to shoot down by a small percentage. You're going to be like, oh, my God, what happened to the NFL? The second thing is you have to put good football on, and that's what's not going on. 16 teams under 500. I'm sorry. That's why the NFL ratings are low.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think there's definitely truth to because there was a poll, and Forbes actually wrote an article on it. Like 32% of adults who watch the NFL regularly said that they're less likely to watch certain games because of the protests. Everybody knows my opinion on this. I think that's the silliest thing I've read. But I also think it comes down to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, and to the NFL's defense, it's hard to predict. I mean, did anybody really see, especially now that we have the injuries, but did anybody really see the Vikings being undefeated right now? I mean, did anybody really see, the Patriots managing to win 3 of those 4 games Tom Brady was out? Odds are probably not. I mean, so a lot of the primetime games, like, for example, most people looking at the Saints offseason thought that this team was going to be a winning team by now. So they saw the whole Saints versus Falcons primetime game as a lot of potential. But as Twitter so eloquently reminded us when that game happened, nobody cares about that rivalry but Saints and Falcons fans, and that's the truth of it. So, I mean, they've also, like you said, made some really poor choices on who is the primetime game. I mean, no offense to Tampa. I'm sorry. But what has Tampa done to deserve a Monday Night Football game in any recent memory? Maybe Sunday Night Football, but Monday night? What have they done to deserve that?
No, I totally agree with you on that. And again, it goes back to my idea about it being bad football. And I think it also has a lot to do with the NFL and their inability to promote certain teams. Like you look at the Packers and the Giants. I'm sorry, the Cowboys and the Giants. that rivalry has been shoved down our throats time after time after time after time. But when you look at a game like Atlanta versus New Orleans, nobody pays attention to it simply because the NFL doesn't prop it as one of the biggest rivalries in football. And if you're going to have a rivalry of that magnitude, you need to kind of let the world in on that little secret. And the NFL doesn't. It's kind of like it's just going to be that little kept secret among the NFC South that these two teams don't like each other. And I get it. For a long time, the two teams were horrible. But that's even more of a reason for you to prop it up now, because the two teams have been able to fight for something other than just, the idea that we're going to just, throw the records out the window. We're going to fight to see who's better between the two of us. But, you gotta exploit these type of things. They kind of fell into the trap of it being the 10th anniversary of the Steve Gleason block punt. But how about you prop up the idea that these two teams just don't like each other? And it's been that way. We'll see.
Well, I think that there needs to be work on the marketing for the NFL, but that kind of goes without saying because, honestly, NFL marketing has gotten pretty lazy since it became the most dominant sport in probably all the U.S. The arguments can still be made for baseball. I know it shocks a lot of my football fans when I tell them how popular baseball is, that they sell out, 40,000-seat stadiums 160 times a year. Well, if it's a home game 80 times a year, that blows people's minds. Baseball's still incredibly popular. But the NFL has just gotten to where they're the super juggernaut. There is no, competition. The CFL up in Canada is no competition. I mean, there's nothing for them to fight. So they just push the whole, they stick with America's team. They stick with the Packers. They stick with the Patriots. But you never hear about, when the Buffalo Bills had the best defensive line in decades, a couple years ago, and Jarris Bird was back there and they had potential to make a run. You don't ever hear about, what's another good example? The fact that the Oakland Raiders now, when it comes to Youngstown and Derek Carr, have the potential to run the AFC West for the next 5 years, because to me there's nobody else young and talented and up and coming in the AFC West, but nobody talks about them. They're all still stuck on, the Broncos, and John Elway's the general manager, which to me that I don't see how that means anything. He's done a good job, but why that means that they should get more views and more ratings. But anyway, nobody focuses on the little guys anymore, and I hate that because there's been some years where, even now, do the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott doing great aside, really deserve prime time? No. I do like some of the talent that they picked up. Kudos to Jerry Jones. He also just came out and said that, as soon as Tony Romo's healthy, he's playing again, which is the dumbest thing I've heard in weeks considering how good Dak's been. But yeah, we keep focusing on these teams and ignoring the Dolphins when they have a couple of good runs and Reggie Bush runs 1,000 yards or Ricky Williams is phenomenal. Nobody covers it because we're too busy worrying about if Tom Brady's, who he's marrying, how I'm ranting again. But why is Tom Brady's love life front page news on NFL.com? And then stuff like the Saints having 14 players on injured reserve never mentioned. We just talk about how they're the 32nd defense in the NFL. The priorities are so mixed up.
And it's always going to be that way because the NFL, first of all, the arrogance of the NFL, to me, has a lot to do with the ratings drop. When the fans don't know what is a catch and what isn't a catch, that's confusing in and of itself. When you've got guys that, that the calls are subjective. Well, this may or may not be pass interference, but this definitely is. When you can't clean that up for your fans to understand, then the arrogance of the NFL is they'll like it anyway. We'll do what we want to do and they'll like it. And not to mention that, but you can't keep marketing the same. Like, you can't fall into the trap of the NBA. And I quite honestly believe Roger Goodell, forgive me for saying it this way, but he's a bit of a copycat. He's a bit of a guy who lacks his own vision. If somebody were to ask you, what is Roger Goodell's stamp on the NFL? I believe it'd be hard pressed for you to give them an answer. You can, if you're going to tell me, well, he tried to clean up the NFL with the player policies and with discipline and all of that stuff. Well, the players hate him for that. The players don't like him. They don't trust him. So what is his claim to fame in the NFL? Well, he made the NFL a lot of money. Guess what? Rev and I could have sat down, pour 2 glasses of milk, put a pack of Oreos in between us, and we could have knocked out the same deal. Yeah. Why? Because it's the NFL. Everybody wants to see it anyway. The product was already there. The supply and the demand was there. All you had to do was go to the TV networks and say, hey, guess what? We're the NFL. Where's the blank check? So don't give me that. So that's the problem with the NFL as well. They're recycling the same teams. They're being very much like the NBA. In the NBA, you only have 5, maybe 6 teams that have a chance of winning the championship. The NFL was built on parity. Now we're starting to seem like we want to just recycle the same guys. New England is always going to be that team everybody talks about. They want the Green Bay Packers to be that team that everybody talks about. Dallas, America's team, let's talk about them. And it's the same teams over and over. Of course you want the New York Giants to do well. The NFL offices are in New York. You wanted a team so bad in L.A. that you would threaten every team in the country to build a new stadium, or else they couldn't get a Super Bowl without one. And now you have a team in Los Angeles, and you were looking to put 2 teams in Los Angeles. I mean, it's ridiculous, the arrogance of the NFL. That's what's turning the fans off as well. And Roger Goodell being a copycat isn't helping. You need to market all of your teams, not just a select few. Go on to a major sports, I guess, apparel company. You'll see all of the teams when you flip through the pages. But the first 4 teams you see, Denver Broncos, New England Patriots, Green Bay Packers, Dallas Cowboys. And you might see the 5th team, you will see the New York Giants, and you'll see them every single time. Those 5 teams all over again. Go to an NBA apparel store. You know who you'll see? Now you'll see the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, the New York Knicks, Chicago Bulls, Los Angeles Lakers, Boston Celtics. There's 6 teams in the NBA. That's what they want to win. And the NFL is following that format.
Well, I'm definitely in all agreement with you, man. It's a head shaker, man. And like you said, I don't really see it getting better. And as far as Goodell goes, I mean, you're right. One thing I would love to happen, and I would eat this up, is if NFL.com gave somebody like Mike Pereira his own show. Everybody who doesn't know, he's the head of officiating for several years. He just knows the rules. And he sat down and taught the rules, and say he was paired with somebody, say, instead of turning people like Michael Irvin and Terry Bradshaw into basically nothing more than color commentators, what if you actually gave them a show and they taught you football? One of my favorite things that they'll do with game previews is like coach's tape, where John Gruden will sit down and tell you what this play was and how they ran it. Or Bucky Brooks breaks down a play and shows you how this player has a matchup against this player, but they only run it for like a 30-second segment. Why do we not have 30-minute and 1-hour shows dedicated to teaching the game? Not just for entertainment. That would help colleges, help high schoolers, help pee-wee football coaches, and build the knowledge of the game. And because everybody talks about wanting college game to be more like the NFL so the transition's easier. Yet, NFL, really the only way to know NFL styles is to study the coaches. There's no material readily just thrown to you to teach you that stuff. But when I was in high school, I remember us watching the film, and there would be shows that they would show us, not just our games, but games from other teams, and they would break it down for us. I love watching that stuff. I'm sure I can't be the only one. There's got to be other fans who would love to have shows like that, but instead we get stuck listening to Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless, argue over stupid stuff that has no point. It's nothing but color commentary and junk and drama instead of actual valid football talk, which is what I eat up. And yeah, I'm sure drama sells more, but man, I would much rather have, and I'm sure I could find enough people to where we could keep the ratings of one good football show going to where you could actually teach us something instead of being a 24-hour network devoted to football drama.
Totally agree. And it goes back to the thing about arrogance. Because the NFL doesn't care about college football. The NFL doesn't care about high school, pee-wee. They don't care because the NFL is all about that check. That as long as the ratings are there and the fans are buying the merchandise, and like for as much as Roger Goodell may want to say he frowns upon what Colin Kaepernick did, it made the NFL the lead story across the country. It wasn't just on ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or any of those. It was on CNN, Good Morning America, shows, MSNBC. It was everywhere. And what does that do? It puts eyes on the NFL. Because if you didn't know about the NFL, now you want to see who's this idiot, this clown, whatever you want to call him, that's disrespecting our flag, our national anthem. You want to see who this guy is.